I was sitting in my bed thinking about what worldly disasters I could cause today, when the thought hit me. What would a TF2 weapon look like if it had the combined stats of all the weapons in its weapon slot? Yeah, I can't think of a better way to word this, but hopefully you guys get the idea. So that's what this video is going over, and we're starting with the Boston boy himself, the Scout. Now when I say combined stats of all the weapons in its weapon slot, what does that mean? It means we're combining the weapon stats of a character's certain type of weapon. Like for the Scout, we would combine all of his Scattergun stats. Let's get into some general rules we're going to go by. Here's how it works. If a weapon gives plus 20% firing speed, and another weapon takes away minus 10 firing speed, then the firing speed overall gives a plus 10% bonus. One thing to note is not all weapons in a weapon slot will be combined. For example, Heavy has two different secondaries, these being the lunchbox items and the shotgun items. Each will be separated into its own category. If all the downsides on a certain weapon reach over minus 100%, meaning it won't do anything, the percent will be sent to minus 99%, but I'll be putting the number it would be in parentheses next to the minus 99%. All damage, bullet spread, and clip size positive and negatives will be based off the stock item. I won't be going into detail about bullet spread or crits unless the weapon specifically says anything in regard to those two. If a weapon is of the same weapon slot, even though they look different like Dumb Man's swords and bottles, I will still be combining them into one because they serve the same function. While weapons like Scout's pistol and Mad Milk I will be separating because they serve different purposes and do completely different things. And it's way too complicated and I don't want to get into it right now. If you see a stat on a weapon that isn't on that weapon in TF2, that's because I'm using the TF2 wiki as a guide to look at the weapon stats, even the hidden stats. At the end of the video, I'll be putting the weapons in a tier list to see which ones become overpowered and which ones become completely useless. With that all out of the way, let's get on with it. First, let's take a look at the Scattergun stats. The Scattergun shoots 10 pellets, all doing 6 damage each. He's able to fire his Scattergun every 0.625 seconds, and he can load up to 6 ammo before he has to reload. He has a reload speed time of 0.7 seconds for the first bullet, and a reload speed time of 0.5 seconds for the remaining bullets. Now let's look at the positives of his new Scattergun. His new Scattergun adds a bonus of plus 142% to his firing speed thanks to the Force of Nature, Shortstop, and the Soda Popper. I won't be naming off every weapon that will add or take away from a weapon's stats, but what I will be doing is putting them in parentheses after the stat description so you know which weapons are doing what. If the name of a stat is in blue, it's a positive, but if the name is red, it's a negative. The new Scattergun is able to shoot 90% more damage per pellet, has a 25% faster reload speed, and can mini-crit targets when fired at their back from close range. In case you didn't know, mini-crits add an extra 35% of damage to the target who was shot, which can be helpful in a pinch. And that's all the upsides for the unlockables. Yeah, I thought they have more too, but I guess that means it's time for the downsides. His first downside is having a minus 99% smaller clip size. Still left with one shot, but it's only one shot. Funny enough, every unlockable Scout primary lowers his clip size to either 2 or 4, which I never noticed until writing the script for this video. He has 40% fewer pellets per shot and a 20% increase in push force taken from damage and air blast while deployed, and a 10% slower move speed on wearer. He has a 20% increase in bullet spread, and he loses his boost whenever he air jumps or gets shot, but we'll talk more about boost in a minute. Now we're getting into a category I call extras, which is a funny word for I don't know what else to call it. These are all special effects the gun may give off, whether good or bad. Starting with what the Force of Nature brings to the table, on hit it applies a knockback effect that propels the enemy backward and the user in the opposite direction, if airborne. This allows the user to perform a force jump to horizontally prolong any other jumping techniques. Either you knock enemies far away or you can use it as a third mid-air jump. The Shortstop brings an amazing mechanic where you shove people, and that's it. The Soda Popper adds a hype meter that is placed on the HUD. Damage dealt by the player will build up a hype, and after doing roughly 350 damage, the player can activate hype mode for 8 seconds, allowing for 5 additional air jumps. This stat is kinda pointless because now the Scout only has one bullet in the chamber at a time, but the Force of Nature specifies that it reloads its entire clip size at once, so I gotta throw that in there too. And finally, for the Babyface's blaster, equipping it will slow the scout down from 133% of normal speed to 120% of his normal speed. A boost meter is placed on the HUD where the Babyface's blaster is equipped. Dealing damage regardless of weapon is used while equipping the Babyface's blaster builds up the boost meter, increasing the scout's speed to 173% of its normal speed. The boost meter maxes out at 100 points of damage dealt. He also loses all of his boost if he takes 25 points of damage. For the Scattergun, the shortstop and the soda popper both use right click or mouse 2 to activate their abilities, so I'm changing it. Mouse 2 will activate the height meter, and mouse 3 will activate the shove mechanic. Here are the final stats of the new and improved Scattergun. Yeah, that's all of them. Let's dive into what all these stats truly mean for the new Scattergun. Now, the scout only has one bullet loaded into the chamber. Shoots 6 pellets compared to his normal 10, and now each pellet does 11.4 damage. This can mean he can do a max damage of 68 damage in one shot. He can mini crit from behind, so now he can do a max damage of 92, which is enough to kill a kunai spy, and that's about it. The new Scattergun has a reload speed of 0.525 seconds, which is actually faster than the stock Scattergun's regular attack speed, which is being fired off every 0.625 seconds. If he only has one bullet in the chamber at a time, I can see this as an upside for the scout because he's able to fire faster. Well, there's still runtime in this video, so let's move on to the scout secondaries. Scout has 3 different secondaries that I'm putting into different categories. First, we have the pistols. Now there are 5 pistols for the scout, but only 2 change the stats of the stock pistol, so things are not going to be as complicated as they were for the Scattergun. This new pistol would do 15% more damage, would gain an additional 25% jump height while active. Upon shooting an enemy, he would gain 3 health per shot, and he would have a 15% faster firing speed. The only downside this weapon would have is an 85% clip size reduction, which actually would hold this weapon back a lot. So, this weapon would have one extra stat, which would be from the capper, which is that enemies killed with this weapon suffer a death by incineration. Overall, here are the stats we have for the pistol. This new pistol is able to have 2 shots loaded at a time and fire them off every 0.1275 seconds before reloading. Reload speed stays the same though at 1.1 seconds. He's able to do 17 damage per shot, so the scout could do an effective 34 damage before having to reload the pistol. Overall, I don't think this weapon is the greatest. I think the low damage output is what's holding it back, but it can be used more of a mobility tool or a last second swap if you run out of ammo on the Scattergun. Next, we're looking at what I call the Throwable Weapons. The Throwable Weapons combine the Mad Milk and the Flying Guillotine to make a weapon that I think is actually kinda good. The positive stats of these weapons would be a 20% decrease in charge time for the extinguished allies who are set on fire, causing them bleed on hit, and charge time being reduced by 1.5 seconds if you hit an enemy from a long enough distance. The only downsides of these weapons is that there would be no random crits and you can't pick up the weapon after throwing it. The extra stats for this combination weapon would be that any damage except afterburn done to enemies covered in milk restored 60% of the damage dealt to the attacking player's health. It can also allow you to partially see cloaked spies if you hit them with the milk and extinguish fire on allied players. The milk recharge in 20 seconds. From the Flying Guillotine, the weapon can be thrown at enemies and recharges in 6 seconds. For this, I just took the average recharge time for the Use 2, so it would be a 13-second recharge timer. Here are their stats overall. With this combination of weapons, you would hit an enemy with the milk and guillotine, doing 50 damage and applying milk, then the bleed damage would do damage to the enemy over time, start healing you from the milk. If you get the full bleed duration, you would do an additional 40 damage, and you would heal back 24 health. Nothing overpowered, but still pretty cool. Finally, onto the drinks. I'm not going to go too in-depth with the stats of the drinks, and here's why. The Bonk makes you invincible, and the Crit-A-Cola makes you do mini crits, but marks you for death if you attack. The problem is, you can't attack, so the Bonk is essentially making the Crit-A-Cola useless. Here's what the stats would look like though. From here, let's move on to the melees, because we have a lot to cover. But first, if you're liking the video, then leave a like and subscribe. It shows me that you guys like these kinds of videos and I should make more of them in the future. Back to the video. Scout has 23 different melees to choose from in his arsenal. 15 of those being basically a weapon reskin of the stock bat, and 1 being a reskin of another melee weapon. Let's get this long list of positives out of the way. First, from the Rap Assassin and the Sandman, we get a ball that we can launch at others. I know the Rap Assassin technically has a different projectile that it fires, but I thought it would be fun to combine the two for no reason. So the ball can be launched at players, shatter, cause bleed, and be picked up if it misses. It will still have a small AoE if it misses like the bobble does. Whenever you hit an enemy, you will cause bleeding and mark them for death. If a player is on fire and you hit them, it will be a critical hit and you take 25% less damage from fire. Speaking of crits, this weapon crits whenever it would mini-crit, and melee attacks mini-crit while airborne, which would now turn into a full crit because all mini-crits would be a full crits from now on. This weapon adds a third jump to Scout's arsenal, so you can be bouncing around all over the place, and will drop a small health pack upon killing someone. Finally, this weapon gives the ball bobble combo a 25% increase in its charge rate. With all these upsides, what are the downsides? Oh, just a 99% damage penalty. On top of that, this weapon also lowers your maximum health by 15 points. If you attempt to hit a player and you miss, you hit yourself and cause bleed damage. And finally, this weapon deploys 15% slower. We have a couple extra stats that are all aesthetic purposes really. When you hit an enemy with this weapon, it broadcasts it to the whole server, and if you kill someone, the kill is labeled either as a fish kill or arm kill. I think it would be fun if it was random which kill label appears. The enemy suffers a death by incineration, and also turns into solid Australian statues. In the kill feed, it would show that they died by incineration, but their body would be pure Australian. Overall, here are all the stats of the new bat. Like I said, that's a lot. On the Scout, the new bat provides him with a maximum health of 110. The bat has a base damage of 1, so it's as effective as shoving a player. The ball bobble has a recharge rate of 7.5 seconds, with the ball not shattering upon a miss and when it can be picked up. The ball's damage doesn't change, so it does 15 damage with 40 bleed damage over 5 seconds if it hits. He does get the taunt kill, so he can do that as often as he likes, whatever that would mean for this weapon. Now, how would I rate these weapons? Starting with the Scattergun, I would place it as a solid A tier. Even though it only has one bullet loaded at a time, the reload speed is faster than firing on the stock Scattergun, which is a definite upside, and more damage, even if it's just by a bit, is still really good. Being able to mini-crit on backs can help if you're sneaking up on an unsuspecting enemy too. The pistol I put in C. It's become more of a situational tool to help you get to places you couldn't get to before. The gain health on hit is nice, but you only get 2 shots, so I don't really see it getting that much use. Moving on from the pistol, it's time for the Milk Guillotine combo. For what it is, I think it's an A tier. No real downsides, and being able to use your milk to heal and damage enemies can be really helpful in situations. If you hit more than one enemy, you can be doing a lot of AoE damage while healing on top of that, which can help the Scout stay alive and kill his enemies. The drinks I would put in C tier. It's basically just a bonk, which I think is already a C tier weapon. It's not a bad weapon, it's just very situational, and yeah, that's really all I have to say about it. For the bat, I think it's just a glorified fan of war. Yes, you could mini-crit and then crit kill enemies, but when your crits only do 3 damage, then it's hard to find excuses to keep using it. It does cause bleeding, so maybe it's a tool you could pull out to hit an enemy and then run away and let your team deal with it, but why would you do that when you can just pull out your Scattergun? I think D tier is perfect for this weapon. It's not completely useless, but it's very close to being so. And that's the Scout. I plan on making more of these in the future because this is a lot of fun to make. I'll be doing Soldier next, working my way down the list of mercenaries. If you like the video, leave a like and subscribe. I hope you all have a great day. Peace.